Leafs fam, what is up? So wonderful to be with you on the Maple Leafs conversation, talking Maple Leafs hockey. Not just the game that was won, but the next game to come. The Buds a 3-1 winner over the Bruins at Air Canada Centre, ending a day that we will never forget, for good reasons and obviously terrible reasons. We'll look back on how the Leafs were able to overcome the Bruins to extend things to a 7th game, and of course we will look ahead to tomorrow night. Winner takes the series. Can the Leafs come all the way back, exercising demons from 5 years ago while punching their ticket to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs? I'm Norman James. Mike Augello's coming up. This is the Leafs Conversation. Let's go. Here is our friend, Mr. Augello. Mike, before we talk about the Leafs' 3-1 victory in Game 6 over the Bruins, we're headed to Game 7. Just describe the scene at Air Canada Centre when word started about the horrific incident at Yonge and Finch.
Well, good morning, Norman. You take it sort of for granted that you're sort of in a cocoon when you're, and I've noticed this when I'm covering a game, and everything is focused on the Leafs and the upcoming game, and obviously with the playoffs, it's even more so. But I got the notification from people outside of Toronto who were asking me if I was okay on Facebook or on Twitter, and only then found out what had happened, the tragic events on Yonge and Finch, and it sort of just grew exponentially in terms of the news and the extent of the carnage that this driver had done. And by the time game time had rolled around, everybody knew what was going on, and there was a release from the Leafs regarding stepping up security with thousands of fans in Maple Leaf Square and 19,000 fans in the Air Canada Centre. I have to say, one of the most emotional times of the year. I mean, when Johnny Bauer passed and Gord Downie from the Tragically Hip passed, there was a really somber and really touching and poignant, moment in moments of silence. And it was, I think, last night when they had the moment of silence for the 10 people who were killed. You could feel that presence in the building. And like I said, I have to give credit to Patrice Bergeron from the Boston Bruins and Ron Hainsey from the Leafs for making statements before the game and expressing support. And 5 years ago when the Leafs played the Bruins, the Boston Marathon bombing occurred, and everybody was doing hashtag Boston Strong, and definitely was something to support. And then yet last night I saw people starting to do hashtag Toronto Strong on Twitter. And I mean, my personal thoughts and prayers go out to the families and the victims. And I know that the Leafs really wanted to sort of, I think they saw that maybe the city needed a victory and maybe used that as a bit of motivation last night.
I share your sentiments, Mike, and I know our listeners do too. This is the Leafs Conversation. Check out the YouTube page. Like and subscribe, please. We're trying to grow this thing, and we are going to grow it. It's going to grow out of control, and that's a really good thing. Get in while the getting is good. Be one of the originals. Mike, these guys want to get to the rink. The Boston Bruins want to close out the series. The Maple Leafs want to extend their playoff lives, and now they're confronted with this heinous act that they have to digest, have resting on their heart while they are trying to, get their heart racing for a game. How did you find the players, the organization, and the people involved with the game handled that news amid their own struggles in a hockey context?
Well, after the game, Mike Babcock indicated that, the players, as they were coming in, because they come in a few hours before the game, they were all talking about it, and they did discuss it before the game. But I thought the commentary after the game was very poignant, especially Mitch Marner and Connor Brown, who are from, GTA kids. And, noting that how the community that Toronto is and the great city that Toronto is, and I mean, I have to say, it's my favorite. If it's my favorite city to visit or potentially live in down the road, and I was talking to some reporters who have family in the area, and everybody was concerned, and everybody was just, I mean, it's something that touched, I think, everyone. And they reflected, that after the game, and just I think they used it as motivation, but I also don't think that they just they recognize that it was a traumatic event for the city of Toronto, and try to be respectful and say the right things, and I think they all did.
Whether they liked it or not, or expected it, anticipated it, it was a moment of growth for the young players, especially socially. You're confronted with these kinds of situations. Think about the Yankees after 9/11, right? They went all the way to, I don't know, was it Game 7, Mike? And I know that bothers you on several fronts, but they lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks in that World Series. So you can imagine having to deal with the heartache of a community and rallying to support that community, and then also being sort of the poster children of perseverance and coming out of the darkness and conquering something that collectively the entire city were aspiring to win. So the guys like Mitch Marner and Connor Brown and Austin Matthews, this is a real moment of growth for them. And I don't think people who view these athletes as anything but athletes and things that compete will understand this, but certainly these players will. And who knows, maybe there will be some discussions with, Brendan or Lou or, maybe a psychologist the organization will bring in. So some of these players can digest this in a deeper fashion. And again, remember, they're not just athletes or things. They are human beings. Mike, let's talk about the hockey game. The Leafs win 3-1 to extend the series to a 7th game in Boston. We know about the history down there. They just have to go out and play that one. But in terms of this one, I was pretty impressed with the Maple Leafs in the way that they had some lapses. There was at the end of the second period, Boston's play, and there was maybe a sense that the Leafs didn't have an answer. But that third period, boy, they came out gangbusters. And let's also point out that the trend of the winning team scoring first ended in Game 6. The Leafs fell behind 1-0. And they didn't mess around. They didn't wait 20 minutes or a period to score in response. They came back right away. And I had a feeling William was going to score. I thought he was going to score on that first attempt, but it ended up that he scored on his second attempt on that shift relatively soon after Boston took the 1-0 lead. Describe that situation.
Well, we know that the importance of the first goal, that everybody who scored the first goal in the first 5 games ended up winning the game. I think the key part of the Leafs' victory was responding so quickly that you could tell the air had been let out of the ACC when the Bruins opened the scoring, because I think it was they realized the weight and the relevance of that opening goal. But Nylander scores, I think it was a little over a minute later, and it's sort of, okay, now we're back to even, and it took away the significance of the opening goal. So I mean, I think it was necessary. Like in Game 4, it took about 8 or 9 minutes for Plekanec to even the score, but it was early enough that they didn't think it was going to be a 1-0 game. But Nylander scoring that quickly really, I think, infused the Leafs with some confidence. If the Bruins had held on to the 1-0 lead for, say half a period or longer, then I think it would have weighed on them because their backs were against the wall.
Yeah, that had to be a real shot to the Bruins psyche to have the Leafs score right away like that, because had they followed their method of success that has been a game plan that's worked for them throughout the regular season and even to start the playoffs, they had the Leafs right where they wanted them. And then William Nylander gets off to Schneid, scores his first of the postseason. And you know what? The Leafs were back in that thing. And especially in the third period when they had to be assertive, they made things happen. And let's not forget the Zach Hyman goal that Butch Cassidy challenged, worked out to Boston's advantage. The goal was called back. So the Leafs actually could have won this game 4-1. So there was more adversity the Leafs had to plow through, and whether you think that goal should have been called back or not, I mean, we can dissect it. Part of me thinks it should have been called back, and the other part of me thinks, wow, that's pretty Mickey Mouse. At the end of the day, the Leafs got it done, and that third period, they really showed some serious determination. The question is, did the Leafs expend everything they have to win Game 6 with all of the emotions running high? Was that their shining moment of the season and everything else is gravy? Or on the flip side, is Boston beginning to run out of gas here? Have they expended their top game plan and their top strategy and the way they want to play? And you saw the frustration in Bruce Cassidy's voice post-game talking to reporters. Which team has the advantage going into Game 7 here, Mike, or is it essentially a pick-em?
Yeah, it's a pick-em. I mean, I thought it was a pick-em before the series started, and it's ended up being a pick-em. I mean, yes, I think it's possible that Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak, they've seen an awful lot of ice time. They've absorbed more abuse as the series has gone along, and maybe they're starting to feel it, and that's just playoff hockey. I talked to a Boston reporter last night, and he was like, he's been a big backer of Tuukka Rask, but he didn't think that Rask had a particularly big game in Game 6, and that was coming after apparently he made insinuations of guaranteeing the win in Game 6. So, I thought that was a little humorous, but basically meaningless talk. But with the Leafs, I mean, not everything was roses and candy last night. And they ended up winning the game, but in the first period, like the third period of Game 3 and the third period of Game 5, it was the Freddie Anderson show. He had to come up big. He made 17 saves in the first period.
No question.
And if he had let in a goal earlier in that first period with the game sort of with basically the teams feeling each other out, I think we would have maybe had a different outcome. Then in the second period, and I noted this in the piece that I wrote after the game, the Leafs simply could not get the puck out of their own zone. Every single time they shot it up the boards, it was intercepted by a pinching Bruins forward. They could not get it out. The Bruins dominated play. They generated numerous chances. And, I commented to somebody after the second period. I'm like, they don't deserve to be in the lead right now. They're leading 2-1, but they don't deserve to be in the lead because they're just giving the puck away. And then in third, as you said, they played a lot more responsible defensively and wiser with the puck. But they said, if they play like they did in the second period in Boston, I don't have a lot of hope for them in Game 7. They got to tighten up defensively.
But Mike, what do you attribute that to? Isn't that just sports? Isn't that just the way the game is played? Like, there's a schizophrenia to a team's behavior and performance night in and night out. How is it that the team looked so inept and so out of its depth over one period of play or one phase of the game, and then just takes total control at a time when it really needed to? And instead of lauding that moment where they came through in the clutch and got the result they wanted, we're looking back on a portion of the game that was, quite frankly, embarrassing, but didn't necessarily play a role in the outcome of the game. I mean, should we forget about the bad and just focus on the good, or since the ebbs and flows of this series have been quite evident, look, be happy with what you've been able to achieve so far, but let's not forget these deficiencies, because the ebbs and the flows of this series could turn out being the final play does not work out in your favor, and that that final moment you're actually in one of those valleys as opposed to riding high at the peak.
Yeah, I mean, to my mind, you never ignore the negatives, because the only way that you can win more consistently is to improve on the negatives. And and they did improve on the negatives in the third. They seemed to be able to break out of the defensive zone a lot better. They were holding. I mean, it was simply when they got the puck on their stick. The Bruins tried their best to take away the stretch pass, which has been one of the things that the Leafs have tried to do to sort of break through on the Bruins D. They seem to neutralize that for long stretches. And then the only other avenue to get out of the defensive zone, as soon as they got the puck, they banged it off the boards, but they didn't bang it off the boards hard enough or high enough. And Boston continued to intercept that. Now they got better by maybe carrying the puck a little more in the third period, but again, in a Game 7 situation, when you've got the crowd at TD Garden on your back, and the Bruins have the last change, especially in the second period when it's the long change, you've got to get that puck out of the defensive zone. And Mike Babcock, he's not going to change up his defensemen, but he's going to have to maybe come up with some other strategy. Maybe have a forward come in deep and help them escape the zone. But if they continue to do that, they're not going to win Game 7. So they have to improve on that.
So, Mike, for Game 7, and we'll wrap up real quick here. This is the Leafs Conversation. Mike Augello, Norman James, brothers in pod. Maple brothers, Maple sisters, thank you so much for listening. I sound like I'm trying to bring together some sort of weird society here, and maybe we all become a bit weird here through this process. But this is a lot of fun. Game 7, Mike. Is it a white knuckle nail biter, one goal contest, maybe down to the final minutes, or does Boston come out and just shock and awe and take the Leafs off guard and have the Leafs playing from behind, or is Boston getting a little bit tired and maybe they're feeling the heat, not only from the local media and the fans, but within themselves, and the Leafs come out and we see the Austin Matthews show finally have the curtain raised on it.
Well, it was funny that the emphasis after the game about Game 7 was have fun from Babcock, from some of the players. Just go out there and have fun. I can't, maybe that's just a way of deflecting the pressure. But honestly, like if it was me in a situation and me being somebody who covers the team, or me going back to being a fan, Game 7s are never fun. Game 7s are, you're curled up on the couch, afraid to move, or you're.
Well, that's for fans.
That's for fans, man. Right, but I'm saying, fans can't understand that these are players and they're in the moment, and they don't feel that kind of pressure. I know that Freddie Anderson basically, sort of, and they not poo-pooed the pressure commentary, but said, we're just going to go out there and, hopefully we can come through, and I think that's the attitude of the team. Now, how the game will play out, how it will be, I mean, nobody knows. I'm not Nostradamus, but I mean, I think I think that Boston will try to come out early and throw a knockout punch. It's going to be, the first 5 to 10 minutes will be important, as every game is. Where if the Leafs can withstand the early pressure, then it's going to be a nail biter, a white knuckle game, as you described. I just hope, and like I said, there have been too many parallels and maybe too much talk of 2013. But with the Leafs were down 3-1 in that series. They came back. Reimer stole Game 5. Their big guys came out and won in Game 6, and then they went to Game 7. I just hope, in a way, this is not a game where, like Game 5, the Leafs get up 4-1, and then all we hear is the chatter. Because I hope that it's I hope that it's a 2-2 game in the third period, and that somebody wins on a late goal or an overtime, and not this whole epic collapse, because the narrative is tired, and I think people are tired of talking about it. But you can't ignore it, because it is what it is.
It is what it is, Mike. The thing about the Maple Leafs are an awesome team, and they are on the journey towards the Stanley Cup. I truly believe that. I'm not sure when it happens, maybe it's this year. Odds are slim, but they're still there. The Leafs are still alive. It could be next season. Hopefully by 2019, 2020, this team is finally hoisting a Stanley Cup. But it is what it is. And the thing about the Maple Leafs, they can do it all. They can win coming from behind. They can win with a big lead by just barely hanging on. They can dominate, but they can also blow a lead. They can also get blown out themselves. And, when Mike Babcock and the players say, just go have fun, I don't know, this is what you dream of, a Game 7, and just go out and have some fun. With the Bruins, look, the bottom line is they had a 3-1 lead. They were favored by many to win this series. They were the second best team during the regular season. They're at home. They don't want to, have that spirit of 2013 finally be put to rest once and for all by the Leafs making amends for their predecessor's failure, right? So there's a lot on the line here, and I'm wondering if in the first 10 minutes of the game, I think fans will be more engaged in the game itself than the players because there's going to be a feeling out process. Real quick, Austin Matthews, we haven't seen him shine as bright as many had hoped. That has no bearing on his career or his abilities or what he's going to do. The guy is the most talented player on the ice. Technically, he's going to find his way. If he doesn't do it and the Leafs lose tomorrow, then he's going to regret missed opportunities. But maybe it is tomorrow. Maybe he finds his way and he helps get the Leafs into the second round. The other thing, Mitch Marner, 8 points. This kid, I keep telling you, no one's got a bigger heart. No one has more natural skill than this kid. And there is no quit in Mitch Marner. That kid never takes a shift off. He is fantastic. I absolutely love him. And he's the kind of guy who can lead this team to where it needs to go and kind of be there holding down the fort while guys like Austin Matthews and William Nylander navigate their way through the mess they have to and finally get on track. Mitch Marner will help get them there. And boy, oh boy, if Mitch, Nylander, and Austin Matthews are all going in the biggest game of their lives, wouldn't that be a lot of fun? And who knows, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that last year, Marner was considered a no-show in the playoffs. Only afterward did we find out that he had mono the last, I think, 6 weeks of the regular season and was weakened and didn't have a particularly great series against Washington. And Matthews had scored 4 goals, and now the tables are reversed. I mean, I think Matthews, and somebody described this. I mean, it's really a tough task for a 20-year-old, even a superstar 20-year-old, to contend with playing against Patrice Bergeron and being matched up against Chara and McAvoy. It's you're gonna get suffocated, you're gonna get shut down, and the only positive there, I mean, if he can break through against those guys, that's great. But he's basically taking up all the top defensive matchups against. From the Bruins, and that opens up the opportunity for the other lines to step up. And Marner has stepped up, as you said, 8 points. He's been fantastic. He's absorbed a ton of abuse from Brad Marchand. And I asked him yesterday, is it tough to maintain your composure when Marchand does that? And he basically said, "I just laugh." So that's what he does, and that's the way that the Leafs have to approach that abuse in Game 7 is to just maintain your composure, let them take the penalties, and if they get power plays and take advantage of it, that'll be a step closer to them winning in Game 7.
Mitch Marner's from the mecca of hockey. He came up through the toughest, biggest, most intense, seething, rival-based, just saturated hockey league in the world. This kid knows what it's about. The Brad Marchand stuff is nothing. Mitch Marner's been dealing with it his entire career. He knows how to deal with this stuff. He's done it through minor hockey and through junior hockey, the smallest guy on the ice, people who doubting his talents. He's at some point he's going to blow past a guy like Brad Marchand, who's a fantastic player in his own right. But Brad Marchand's not as skilled as Mitch Marner. Not even close. Marchand brings an element to the game that Mitch doesn't have to bring because that's not his game. So the stuff with Brad Marchand, Mitch Marner just laughs at him because Mitch Marner will have 300 more points than Brad Marchand at the end of their careers. Let's give the kid some credit here. He's the most naturally gifted kid on the ice. Maybe not the most talented overall based on his size and his strengths and his overall abilities physically, but the kid just knows how to get it done. And I'm not disparaging Brad Marchand. I wish he was on the Maple Leafs, but the stuff he's having to deal with, other than maybe the physical toll, he just laughs that stuff off. Mike, what are you writing? What are you working on? We got to go.
I'll just be doing webcasts for Hockey Buzz, writing articles for Sporting News. I'm sure Game 7 is going to be the focal point of it. Will be the focal point of the NHL because it's the only series that got to 7 games. And I would say follow me at Mike and Buffalo on Twitter. I'm sure during Game 7 it'll be basically a comment during every puck stoppage.
Mm-hmm. And me here in London, Ontario, I'll be grooming the cats and doing yard work. So we're right on par, man. We're right on par, brother. Hey, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Norman.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Leafs Convo. Hashtag the Leafs Convo on social media. Folks, this is what's great about today. We have a hockey team that we support that is still in the mix. There's more hockey to play. As fans, that's amazing. For the players, it's even more amazing. They just want to keep on playing. That's the whole aim at this time of the year, to keep on playing. It could have ended last night, but it didn't. It may end tomorrow, but it may not. We know the Maple Leafs are on the path towards a Stanley Cup championship, or at least an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup. Maybe it happens in 3 seasons. Maybe it happens this spring. I don't know. We don't know. That's the beauty of sports. The Leafs have the team that can compete for a Stanley Cup. Comprised the way it is right now, that's arguable. But they're still in the mix. And I love it. Follow the podcast on YouTube. I'm really trying to build up that page. Like and subscribe to the Leafs Conversation on YouTube. All of our podcasts end up there. We're also on Anchor and iTunes and SoundCloud, Google Play, Pocket Cast, Overcast. We are trying to reignite the Leafs Conversation and get it back to where it was a few years ago and go beyond that. And we need your help in doing that. In turn, we'll continue to provide you with more in-depth Leafs discussion from the perspective of fans, from the perspective of journalists, from the perspective of just average people who are interested in watching Maple Leafs hockey. Thank you so much to all of you who support. Enjoy the day today. Hashtag Toronto Strong, my hometown. I love that city more than you know. For Mike Augello, I'm Norman James. I'm out.